Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. Welcome back to my channel. A few days ago, Sir Keir Starmer, Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, was giving an interview to Laura Kuenssberg, who's one of the BBC's main political journalists, and she asked him, "Do you trust Trump?" And the Prime Minister said, "Yes." Wow, astonishing. Now, is Starmer thick or is he lying? Sir Keir Starmer, well, he was knighted for being director of the public prosecutions. He did not ascend to that position through idiocy. Even his most implacable foe wouldn't call him stupid. But then it's surprising what clever people can be like. Remember, I saw a bit of Dangerous Liaisons the other day, and Madame de Merteuil says, like most intellectuals, he's intensely stupid. You look at Liz Truss, a highly intelligent, educated woman, got it just so badly wrong on the economy. But in this situation, I'm sure that Starmer is stupid. He's someone who weighs his words. He's very circumspect. He was quite cautious as director of public prosecutions, saying about incitement to hatred, instructing prosecutors to err on the side of caution about prosecuting, not prosecute unless they're very sure that it's a very strong case, and so forth. So I would bet my bottom dollar that he doesn't trust Trump further than he could throw him. He knows that Trump is a pathological liar. Donald J. Trump, who told over 20,000 lies on the record in his first presidential term, how many lies in the second presidential term, so many lies in his State of the Union address or other public utterances since resuming office. So he's saying that to humor Donald J. Trump. He's trying to butter him up, been semi-successful, looks like so far. The United States thus far is not imposing tariffs on the United Kingdom, and so it goes on. So we're trying to persuade Trump to backtrack, to resume military aid, intelligence sharing with Ukraine, for the United States not to scupper NATO, and so forth. Now, so Starmer says rightly that he doesn't trust Putin, and I mean I have to applaud Sakir for saying the obvious truth that no, that Ukraine hasn't done anything wrong. He said Zelensky hasn't done anything wrong. I think probably been a few misjudgments from Zelensky, but nothing morally wrong or illegal. Um, so it proves to us, I suppose, that Starmer will say anything just to keep on the right side of Trump. He's lying. Now, everybody lies, including yours truly. But this is a barefaced one, and it obviously won't go down terribly well with the Labour Party, who would trust Trump. What, a convicted criminal, and you trust him? How idiotic can you be? A fraudster with that Trump University that was not a university at all, and so on and on and on. You know, Trump, who says that Trump wine is good, he doesn't even drink wine. Well, it's gone bust. He's gone bankrupt 4 times. Would you lend money to such a man? And so on. He doesn't trust him, but he's saying that because if he'd said no, and that got back to Donald J. Trump, who Trump even noticed, then he'd be mortally offended because he'd make this show of injured innocence. Oh, how dare you say that? You're the biggest liar and a loser, and blah blah blah. So Trump's got such a weather vane mind. Could he change his mind? His lability is such because of his Alzheimer's, because it leads to people being very emotionally changeable. That's why he could turn 180 degrees on the Ukraine or something like that. There's this idea that if American workers are in there to exploit Ukrainian minerals, that will act as some sort of security guarantee, and then Russia wouldn't invade. Well, that's preposterous. There are Americans working in Ukraine when this war started. Not very many. There are Americans in Gaza who got killed by the Israeli Defense Force, but of course they don't count in Trump world because they're ethnic Palestinian and they're Muslim in almost all cases. There are Americans working in virtually every country in the world, and so that's not guaranteed that that won't happen. So I don't think the United States would be going to war over a few American miners and so forth in Ukraine. So that's it. You know, he's got to try and do everything he can to save NATO, Sir Keir Starmer, because the United Kingdom's had a free ride for a very, very long time, has cut back and cut back the military. And some of that was sensible, of course, in the early 90s, the end of the Cold War. But they say because of improved technology that some of these units are force multipliers, that warships, they can go faster. They have missiles that fire further and things like that. So you don't need as many of them, which is true to some extent. Well, the one thing is they can't be in 2 places at once. A lot of them are for refit. That obviously don't need as many soldiers because technology can replace some of the soldiers. That they can be using drones and things like that. There are all sorts of plans about how the British Army can improve retention, just to raise the retirement age. Physical fitness doesn't matter as much. Not as much of it is about running around and carrying heavy items. Still some of it. Um, and some of the older soldiers who are not so physically capable can be doing desk jobs, controlling drones from thousands of miles away, and things like that. But numbers still do matter. It's quality and quantity, like everything else. And no matter how high the quality is, quality on its own won't completely replace quantity. Another point is military technology doesn't guarantee victory. You look at Afghanistan, the Taliban had no planes, no helicopters, no tanks, no howitzers, hardly any rockets or missiles. Even their small arms were often quite antiquated, and they still won because they were willing to suffer enough casualties to string it out to keep on going, despite their opponents, NATO and the Afghan army, having superior technology in every regard. I mean, way superior, like 2 or 3 generations ahead. That's it. So it's obviously the willingness to suffer casualties, and Putin reckons that Western Europeans are soft, are decadent, too used to a comfortable life, are not willing to have significant number of their people killed. The European NATO countries had, was it about 2,000 people killed in Afghanistan over 20 years? That was enough to them. It was really an American decision. The various European NATO countries have fought in Iraq, and no, that wasn't a NATO mission. But again, they had like under 3,000 people killed, and that was only in about 8 years. And again, that was too much for them. I mean, to some extent, that was also an American mission. The other thing has actually succeeded because there's an Iraqi government there that everybody recognizes as legitimate. Iraq is a completely independent state. Problem with ISIS, that's now defeated. Kurdistan is effectively broken away, but somehow manages cordial relations with the rest of Iraq. And that's it. And there's no genocidal tyrant there, and there's no weapons of mass destruction. And one of the great untold stories that Iraq is actually quite successful. Yes, it was terrible for a few years, but nobody seems to face up to this. What went right about Iraq? So, Keir Starmer, he's caught in between a rock and a hard place, between a difficult economic situation at home, and the need to hugely ramp up defense spending. Now, Russia is less of a threat than it was because, as I said, they've lost 2/3 of their tank fleet, about 200,000 men of their killed, about 3 times that number wounded, a few thousand are prisoners, and so on. And so they're actually weaker than they were 3 years ago. Now they've got a bigger army, but these are sometimes the scrapings of prisoners, people who rush through basic training. They lost a lot of the cream of their army very early on. A lot of paratroopers, very highly trained, very physically fit, killed in the early days. Whereas the NATO armies have been getting bigger and better. One thing is, you say we spend the money now, often we don't get the assets for a year or two. And obviously, to recruit the people, train them. You can't just spend the money and have a larger and better army instantly. But they have been ramping up to it. So if the Ukraine war ends in 6 months and Russia wants to move on, attack somewhere else in Europe in 2026, they'll be in a weaker position than they were. But obviously, don't want to leave it to chance. Well, thank you for watching my channel. Hello, Qasim. Do I pronounce it correctly? Morning from us. Where are you? Please donate on PayPal, georgecallahan79@gmail.com. I urgently need donations to sustain the channel, and subscribe on Patreon. Okay, toodaloo, and check out all my TikTok videos.